see the trend of social networking and how that's sort of exploding and coming into the enterprise. So now we're sort of taking that in there and having this activity feeds tab. So click on there, and I can see either all my contacts or my frequent contacts on there, and I'm seeing updates or status notes. Okay, so that's drawing that through from a number of sources, and those number of sources will expand and grow as we go through. So if someone changes their job title and it's updated and pushes through, goes through into SharePoint even, or they change their photo in SharePoint, that information gets pushed to me and my client. So I can have a quick stop view, if you like, of all of my contacts who I work with on a day-to-day basis. I can see their availability, and then I can make decisions around how I communicate with them based on that. So that's just a quick snapshot view. That will expand to include other external social media engines. So you're dragging all of that into a single location where you can actually act on there as well. Call logs, IM logs, video logs, that type of stuff, right? We're all getting more and more types of communications, especially when you deploy UC in the enterprise. It's no longer just trying to stay on top of your email. You're now managing other modes all in a single place. So what we've done is actually pulled all of that together. So now all of my logs, whatever they happen to be, whether it's a conference call, a video call, just a person-to-person call or external, doesn't matter, all of that comes into play. Even your instant message history, right? One of the big things you're finding with IM is I'll IM somebody on a Monday. Thursday I need to refer back to it, and it's, what do they say in that IM? Now you can just scroll through, you can find the IM, and it has all the history there. With a single click to actually reinitiate that conversation or communication with the user. All right, so it keeps everything in context and flows through. Another big change is the telephony tab, which is the last one on here. All right. So with Communication Server R2 and the Communicator R2 client, some users, a lot of feedback was, we didn't know it was a phone. All right? We didn't know you could make phone calls and receive phone calls from this thing, because where do I key in the numbers, right? Yeah, of course, we'd say, yeah, just key in the number across the search bar, make a call. But, what about if you're hands-free, you don't have any devices such as headsets or phones or other things plugged in there? Now you can actually just use a DTMF-style keypad. It actually's got the look and it's got the feel of the phone. There's some other stuff on here as well in the bottom I'll talk about when we go through a demonstration. Big ask. We say we want to be this complete communications platform that does everything, does all modes of communications. With voice, with the previous release with R2, we really had just one standalone IP telephone type device, which is this one up here, and the higher they are at the chart, the higher they are in price point, which was great. A colour, touchscreen display, really sat well on the execs. They love those sorts of phones on there. But addressing the standalone IP phone type device for the information worker, for the knowledge worker, for common area phones, and how we address things like analog with fax and those types of devices as well. To truly offer a full communications platform, you needed more devices. So we've partnered with Astra and Polycom at launch. There'll be more manufacturers as we go down track. And we've introduced this range of IP phone devices. I'm loath to call them sort of phones, sort of IP endpoints, because they're much more than that, right? A phone is just something that gives you dial tone, all right? And it's just a device. It's not intelligent. With these devices, all of them run the same software load, and I see that same contact card exposed that I see on my communicator client, with the person's picture, with their presence. I can search through my contacts. I even have my calendar now pushed onto this device, so I can actually see that and join conference calls with a single click from a phone as well. Okay? So they're much more intelligent, what we call it, that sort of dumb IP phone. But they're at a price point that's not really been seen in the market in terms of the features they're actually delivering there as out there. Polycom announced, I think, $199 and $299 for their sort of two phones they bring out. So when you look at when, as an enterprise, you spend traditionally on a unified comms or a communications platform, the bulk of the cost goes in these things, right? It's the endpoints. So by driving down that price point, and by us as Microsoft focusing purely on the software and allowing our partners to deliver on the hardware, again, we're really seeing that price point start to drive down. So with 14, we're seeing this huge paradigm shift from hardware to software-based comms, and conversely, that's also driving down the price significantly. Okay, so with that, I'm going to step out of here and give you a bit of look and feel for the client, show what it actually looks like. All right, so here's my communicator client on the phone, and I'm in my first tab on here, which is the general tab up there, and you can see I've got my contacts who I work with grouped into different groups. They could be internal contacts, they could be external contacts we're federated with, they could be contacts from the public consumer world, because we'll also do free federation to the likes of MSN and AOL. We also federate out to Yahoo. I'll talk a little bit about the MSN and the live stuff and things that have changed on here. But anywhere I scroll down and I hover over somebody, such as Hillary, then I see her contact card exposed. and there's probably an out-of-office note which I can click on. Hi at Tech Ed, if urgent. You know, I can get full details just by hovering over somebody's presence. I can see where they are. I can also see that Hillary's signed onto a mobile device on the screen on there, okay? So again, it changes the way you start to communicate with people based around presence. So that's nothing new, right? We had that in R2. You know, conversely, I can go in here and I can search for somebody. Okay, that'll go away. Do a search, go and retrieve me bills and details at the back end. Through on the screen, here we go. Chairman, great, initiate a phone call straight from there. But what about, I don't know I need to speak to Bill, well, he doesn't know he needs to speak to me, but what about if I need to find somebody, say, find an expert, I get a phone call, someone wants to know about SharePoint, you know, well, I'm not a SharePoint expert, you know, I do this voice and this UC stuff, but more and more as we see the products sort of intertwine in terms of communications and collaboration, I'm working a lot more closely with other team members. So, as well as having a search which goes out and searches the directory, we've also introduced something what we call skill search. This is really great for going to find an expert in your organization, even if you don't know who that happens to be. Okay, so I can just go in here and I can go SharePoint, Professional NZ, nobody under the name search, but I can go and tag that and do a skill search out there. When I do a skill search, that's now going away and trawling our SharePoint back in. Okay? That'll now go away and search on those keywords in the metadata and actually return that information. So the first person actually retrieves to me, bang, Paul Quirk, Solution Specialist, IW in New Zealand, and he's available, right? So I know I found the person I need to communicate with, I know he's available. He happens to be on a mobile phone, right? Doesn't matter to me, I can see he's available, therefore he wants to take my call. All right? So all I need to do to communicate with Paul, if I do want to make a voice call from there, is just single click on the icon. You see, it will actually intelligently select what device he's signed in at, all right? So by default, it's forcing me to sign Paul's mobile. All right? If he wasn't signed onto there, it could just default with his work number that actually has to be populated through on there. But it's actually pushed that through on his mobile. So single click, I've done a quick search for SharePoint, I can then go on there and initiate a phone call out. I'm tethered into this device, and I can go away and initiate a phone call straight out of there. Paul's in the audience somewhere, so we can hear his mobile phone ringing, which he forgot to put on silent. Once we go into that call, so I'm just hands-free on there now talking to Paul, instantly his presence status changes. Okay, so you'll see that Paul's showing in a call right now, mobile. Okay, so we're extending his mobile presence through, back. Anybody monitoring Paul will know he's in a phone call, they'll know he's on a mobile device. So even on a mobile phone, we get that inner call presence extended all the way back. That's useful in terms of when you need to communicate with people. Mine I've manually set to do not disturb, for obvious reasons, because we normally do these presentations and all these calls start popping in and IAMs coming in and everything else there around there. So I've done a manual change around it. Okay, so I'll just draw that call on. What we do have in terms of presence, if I look there, you see some changes in status if you looked at the previous one before. We now have an off work status, a be right back status. And if you've seen the previous version of OCSR2, we used to have these half yellow, half green type colours and presence statuses, and someone was sort of there but they weren't. We've done away with all that stuff now, right? So now it's simple available. Busy. Busy is an interesting one, right? Because as soon as you set your presence to busy, I say busy is the new available because no one pays any attention to it, right? They'll just IM you anyway. Are you free? Right? It's a normal thing that hops in there when you set your presence to busy. So the only way is to go and sit in there and do not disturb in terms of presence. Other tabs as we go through. So I'll try to scroll down and look at some of the contacts so you can see what that looks like on through there. One of the things I was going to show who we got signed on in the public IAM world. Right. So these are just external consumer type connections that we actually put through. So with MSN and the new Windows Live Beta 4 client that's just been released and is available for public beta, okay, we've now extended, so beyond just being able to do an IAM and presence conversation between my communicator client and the public consumer world, with Windows Live and the new client, we can actually do now high def audio and high def video at 720p media calls between me on my PC where I happen to be and say my son at home happens to be on the laptop, right? So we've now extended that rich media capability beyond the boundaries of the organisation and other organisations, and we start to take that in the consumer world. So think of ways now on how that can change how you can communicate in terms of how your businesses can start to communicate with your external consumers and customers as well. The second tab, this was our activity feeds. Okay, here is just, I can look at all my contacts, or I can just search my activities or frequent contacts. I can see Kirsten, in Sydney, so anything that's changed to status note, Craig's in Berlin, all the different notes and things actually push through as it goes there for all my contacts, okay? And that will just keep streaming down, and keeps a log of everything that's changed. The next one along, this is my call history. all my call logs, my IM logs, my video logs. You can see I made an awful lot of test calls to Paul this morning to make sure that it was all working on it before the demo. Nothing like being prepared around there. Okay. But if I scroll down, what you'll also see is other communications, whether it was a video call to Amit, and if I want to initiate that communication, bang, one click, and I can go straight back into that call directly from there. Right? So it's a great place to go and look at all your history. It's also a way you can manage multiple communications. Right? Sometimes when you get 3 or 4 IMs on the go, right? When you get to my age, it's difficult to manage, so you need to start to have visual indicators around there. So that now comes into that client. So I can see which ones are active. I get these green icons that will appear, so I can see which are the active conversations. We also see what are the missed conversations. Conversely, that's also put up here in this tab view. Where I have a notification, you see this yellow star. Like if I were to get a new voicemail, I'd have a 1 appear next to the telephone icon there. Right? So I get this visual indicators all the time, what's happening right across my client as it goes through. The final one is the telephony tab, or telephony key. I always have this telephony keyboard. It's just I can type in a number there and dial it if I so wish. One big change is down the bottom here, voicemail. So with Microsoft UC, we leverage Exchange Server from 2007 and Exchange Server 2010 to deliver our unified messaging experience. So it's our unified inbox for all messaging. What we've done now is, because I use this client as my comms device, so I don't really want to have to step from there, step into Outlook, fire up my Outlook client just to retrieve my voicemail, or I don't necessarily want to dial in via Outlook voice access to retrieve my voicemail. So now what I actually do using Exchange Web Service is actually cache a local copy of that voicemail down into the client. Okay? So if you'll look down there, I have a quick play button where I can play this voicemail message straight onto my PC. If I want the rich experience, I want to forward that message to 100 people in the organization, then I would step out of that client and I would go into Outlook. But if you just want to see who's called you, play the voicemail back, and then again, it's just a simple way to communicate directly with that user on the device that he called you on. One click from there, and it initiates that there through as well. Right? So very, very seamless in terms of the unified comms experience. We've also incorporated some advanced voice quality metrics. Okay, so giving feedback or giving an experience around network quality. So the one thing with Communication Server is you can use this anywhere. It's VPN-less, all right? So it doesn't matter whether I'm on net, whether I'm off net. As long as I've got a Wi-Fi connection, I can do voice and I can do video, all right? And we can manage that across there. When we go through some of the other sessions, you'll see some of the advances we put in the back end around call and mission control to actually manage that voice quality and video quality more effectively across WAN and LAN infrastructure as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to step back in and move to the client. So, server. What else has happened? We talked about the front end and in the client, but what's happened in the back end as well. All right. Put topology simplified. They did this whole great list on the chart, and just so you can see what's on there. Right? But if you're familiar with Office Communication Server R2, right, you're aware that we deploy this in a number of roles. Okay, we have our front end, our main server. We have our back end, which is our database, SQL database out there. We have our director, our edge server. This is what sits in a DMZ and what allows the external connectivity for remote users. It's what allows federation to other organizations and federation to the public IM cloud as well. We have archiving and monitoring server roles. We have a new one now for 14 that pops in here, survival branch appliance. When you look at voice and voice communications, if you've got a multi-site organization, that's great that you can deploy this in your data center, right? We can go and shove a server or a couple of servers into our data center. Great, we've got this UC platform with voice and everything else. What happens if I lose my WAN between Auckland and Wellington? The users in Wellington can't get to the data center. Bang, they've lost their comms. Right? Voice is often mission critical to many, many organizations. Right? We talk about delivering that 5 nines type capability where voice is always up. So with Survivable Branch Appliance, we've worked with a number of our partner hardware providers again, Dialogic, Ferrari, Audio Codes, NET, HP, to launch these appliances that basically you can rock up into a branch. And bearing in mind, Microsoft branch is sub 1,000 users, okay? So we're talking a serious branch, right? This is US branch size. So you can drop this box into a branch. That can terminate your local trunks from your telco or from your IT SIP trunk provider into there, that local site. So in Wellington, they'll have their 04 numbers piping into here, okay? WAN connection back to the data center. If that WAN connection goes down, if the data center goes down, whatever happens there, that branch appliance stands up and is survivable. So not only survives voice on that local branch, but it also can survive UC capability as well. All right. So it's not just about that single modality. we're actually extending that experience and actually pushing that in there as well. Okay, so that's a key change, and it's a low-cost way to deliver high available and resilient comms out to multiple locations. Mediation server, standalone. So let's go to the architecture. A mediation server is really a role that was there. It does a lot of things, but it transcodes from the codecs we use internally for voice, etc., and converts them to sort of something that's unencrypted, like G711, which is, you can plug a gateway in there and have traditional lines coming in there. Okay, it's sort of the connectivity, if you like, to that outside world, or to some legacy PBXs. We can connect that through on here. With mediation server with R2, you need to have a single mediation server deployed for every single gateway that you had in your infrastructure. So if you had 10 sites and you wanted each of those sites to have a gateway and telephone lines going out of them, you would have to physically put in a mediation server in each one of those, right? So to scale this thing out with R2, it could become cost prohibitive for a lot of organizations. We've now changed that. It now runs as a service, or can run as a service, or standalone still, but you can run it as a service on the front end server. It can also now route to multiple gateways. So in a traditional organization, you may only need 1 or 2 mediation servers right across your multiple sites across there, okay? Because this thing can then handle and route accordingly. Right, so there's some big changes around the roles. The one big ask, though, we get is, with R2 was, Paul, can I virtualize? And it's, yes, but, right? With R2, we said, yes, you can virtualize some stuff, but we wouldn't recommend you do voice and video, and it's not supported, okay? We are supporting virtualization across virtually every server we have, including audio, including video now. Okay, you can see the specs up on the screen in terms of what we will support, what we won't support. What we've tested across multiple hypervisors. So at launch, that'll be across obviously Hyper-V and the other one, I can't see on the screen, but it might be called VMware on there. All right. So we'll do client virtualization support, but not for audio, video. All right. Bear that in mind when you're doing thin client deployment of Office Communicator to your desktop. You would nearly then need to deploy a phone-type device, okay, to provide that media stream. Again, you'll see going forward as we evolve over the next 12, 18 months, things around client virtualization could change there as well. So the stuff that's not supported on there, branch office, gateway only. I mean, the gateway only is a physical gateway from one of our partner providers to actually push it out there. But everything else, 4 VMs, front end, back end, bang, we can get one physical machine driving easily 500 users, right? Just sitting there waiting. Rule of thumb around the virtualization support is if you look at the standard server roles and what the recommended hardware specs are, and it will say supports 5,000 users, virtualization, chop it in half. Okay? That's in terms of give you what your virtualization numbers are to actually drop this out. The only other prereq is you can't run any other stuff on that physical machine, all right? So it's a virtual instance of all the OCS server roles on one box as it drops through. So what are the components when we actually break that out? So this is logical, okay? So not necessarily physical boxes. As I say, you can virtualize all this and put it into a single spot. So in the DMZ, we have this consolidated edge server, all right? Typically, most organizations, whilst you could virtualize that inside, you'd want it physically isolated for security purposes. So this straddles your internal and external networks, okay? And what allows those remote users to come in. It allows the federated business, anyone else running OCS or Communications Server 14, to actually come in through there as well. And this, what we call the PIC, the Public Internet Connectivity, which is where we connect to those consumer-type IM engines. But as I mentioned with MSN, it's now not just IM presence, it's IM presence, audio, and video federation in there as well. So at the front end, we have this front-end server, okay, sitting in our OCS pool, and it could be one server, it could be multiple servers actually pushing through there. Okay, that now runs the mediation service on there, runs web, runs this what we call LIS, location information service. And again, when we talk about the voice session, the voice and video session this afternoon, we go into a bit of detail about some of the changes that happen around here. It runs things like caller mission control. So we say we're network independent around how we actually set up and how we actually configure, how we can route traffic and maximum, to put a max on traffic that goes across particular links before we reroute accordingly at other areas. We'll also see the SBA, the Cyber Branch Appliance, shown in here. So this is traditionally what you would have in one of your branches, wherever it happens to be, and that's all you would need. Okay? It has an embedded media gateway, so it can connect directly to the PSTN, or it can take a SIP trunk directly into this thing. That will then connect over the data center or over the WAN to the data center, and that's all you need. Basically, we have this concept of primary and secondary registrars, or SIP registrars now. So as a user, when I first register, okay, if I'm in a branch, it will pick up that I've not only got a primary register, which is this thing, I've also got a secondary, which is here. When I lose connectivity, okay, we can actually flip across into the back. Okay, and conversely, if we use the WAN, we survive that side up in terms of the PSD as well. So a lot of intelligent services have been put around them. Likewise, with analog type devices, right? Pretty much every organization may still have a fax machine that's there. Everyone's been saying fax is going to die, right, for the last 10 years or more. It's still there, right? People still want physical fax machines. It's not all about dropping it through into Exchange or sending it out from Exchange. Often they need that bit of paper. So, we've worked again with the gateway providers to make that simple, so you don't need to configure the gateway as a mini PBX. All right, we can centrally push that policy out there, okay, from the communication server. So it's not like I have to I'll configure my communication server platform, and now I need to go and configure a lot of stuff in the immediate gateway. That's no longer the case here. We have our Exchange server backend, okay. That's delivering our Exchange unified messaging. Right now, that's on-premise, is available into New Zealand. But again, we'll talk about some changes in the later sessions about how potentially you can start to mix and match and migrate some of that capability, put that into the cloud. Okay, so putting your messaging and offshoring that if it needs to be. Management, administration, how we look after unified comms, how we look after communication server. Now we have a very, very nice web GUIs to actually drive administrators through here. So when you look at how you actually manage this thing on an ongoing basis, you no longer need to be a telephony expert to manage communications, right? I want to go and set up conferencing for someone, all right? It's wizardry. I can go through, I can click through, I can set up the conferencing. If I want to go and give people additional voice features, because a lot of the stuff we've done with this release is based around telephony, we say we're getting to PBX parity in terms of feature set, all right? So if you want to do an enable call park for a particular user, I can go into the voice features piece and actually push all that through there as well. So I don't have to be an expert to actually deliver this through. All right, so monitoring server. How do we look at comms? You mentioned that in the client now, I can actually have these voice quality metrics pushed out to you to give me visual indicators. And I'll go back in and show that on the client and then so you see what it looks like. But then how do we actually report on that? Okay, so we can actually take that raw data, actually put it into the monitoring dashboards, we can give alerts out, we can push these out into the management tools packs we have now as well. Okay, for our centralized management. So we can actually see what it actually looks like in real time or over periods of time and drill all the way through in terms of the data as it goes through. So with that, I'm actually going to go back and flick in demo now. On there. Go to the phone, so just pop my log. So I'll give Paul a call again because I know he's still got his phone hopefully switched on there. Okay, I'll actually push that through. So we actually get into that protocol. So obviously Paul's on his mobile phone, so I'm just going to show some of the other stuff we have here on the client, all right? So obviously I've got an IM window, Paul's on his mobile phone. Yes, I could IM with his voice call as well, but it's obviously not practical when you're doing it from there, all right? As it goes around there. Video again, I could add video, but hey, he's on a mobile phone device. Is that really going to push through? But when I was in, say, a PC to PC call, as it goes around there, it's very, very easy and intuitive now for users to step up, add video. Perhaps I want to share something, share a desktop. Again, one of the big changes from R2 you'll see on here is I only used to be able to share everything I had, right, to show my whole desktop, which, if you get in your email with toast notifications, you're seeing your emails pop in, that's not necessarily ideal when it comes to that. So now I could actually share an individual program I happen to have open on my desktop. I could even go and take a PowerPoint, and that will then upload into the server and push it through as it goes in. We can do whiteboard sessions, polls. I can show the stage to see what other people are viewing. So the collaboration experience has changed significantly from where we were with R2 as it goes in on there. This is a single client for everything. We say it's a single client for conferencing. So I have here, show you this one list. If I drag and drop people into this communication, or I want to invite people via phone number or via email, that conference experience is extended all the way through as it comes in there. So it doesn't have to be a 2-person call. This could be an ad hoc 50-person call or a 100-person call. It doesn't really matter at all. Okay. So another nice feature we have down the bottom here. Often I've got different devices plugged into my PC, right? So right now I've got a phone plugged into my PC. It's an Ethernet phone, but I've also got a USB connection on there to tether it, to give me a better together type experience as it goes on there. Sometimes I might just be hands-free, or I come into the office in the morning, I fire up my PC, it rings, I answer it, and it's coming hands-free out of the PC. With release 2, it would be, oh, hold on, I'll give you a call back. But I've just got to set the headset, I'll plug the headset in and switch to that device. Now we have hot swap of devices, okay, on the fly. So whether you're in a call, or even if you're not in the call. So currently I've got this Polycom CX600 device plugged in as a handset, or I've got my PC mic and speakers. If I had other devices plugged in and connected as well, such as headsets, I could just quickly select that different device, and that call would transition in real time straight to that particular audio device I happen to be using. All right. So really simplifying that experience. Conversely, with call forwarding, right now my call forwarding is off. I could turn that on. I could forward calls to my mobile just with a single click. Bang. Now my call forwarding is off. I also get notifications, obvious, visual notifications to say that all my calls are now being transferred to my mobile as it comes through there. So if I go on leave for a week, or I'm out of the office for a couple of days and come back in, I don't, I find my client up, I can see that I need to take off and actually do that there. And again, it's very, very intuitive for the user, so I can actually switch that straight from there. Let's go into the back end. So if I go into my tools and options, other things that have changed, all right? So if I go into my ringtones and sounds, I have an option now. I have music on hold down at the client, all right? So as well as having telephony features, we say are coming in and giving us parity. The great thing is, or the bad thing, depends on your point of view around here, you can customize it. It's just a WAV file, right? So you can put on there whatever you happen to want, in terms of playing that back. It's quite sad if I can actually read that from there. Duran Rio, all right? Someone's playing my client on there, so it's a bit sad. But you can put whatever music on hold, or of course you can lock it out by policy if you don't want people playing around and digging it out. One thing I do say is it's a one-size-fits-all. So whatever music you actually select on there as a user, that'll be played to your wife, your girlfriend, and your boss, whichever one happens to call at the same time. So be very wise in what choices you have to make, around on here. Let's talk about the picture source and where that comes, all right? So right now, mine's coming from my default corporate service, which is pulling it out of SharePoint as it goes on here. I also have options to not show my photo if I really don't want to. A few years ago, I had a bit more hair. Or I can switch to a web service as well. Okay. So when I do that and initiate that and connect to a web source, that photo also then gets pushed out to federated contacts, pushed out in there as well. Right? So they start to get that same visual experience as everyone would do internal to the organisation. Conference experience. When I join a conference, and this afternoon we'll go through some demonstrations of how the conference experience has changed, because it's significant changes with where we are with 14. If I joined an audio conference, I now get a single box that comes up for my update reminder. It reminds me I've got a meeting in 5 minutes, and I have join online button, one click. I don't need to open the meeting up, I don't need any PIN numbers. One click, join online. That will then prompt me as to what device I want to join that audio conference in. So I could be on a customer site where I've just got a phone they give me with a direct dial number. I click join from that number, and the server calls me back and joins me to that conference. Okay, pushes it through there. If I want to join from my mobile, so I'm just hanging out at the office, great, I can do that and do it from there as well. Conversely, I can also do that join straight from my mobile phone on that same experience to actually push it through and get in. So that's some of the changes that have happened around conferencing. And again, you can see the numbers are actually populated through it. Call forwarding options. So this was similar to what I had at the back end down here in terms of one click from the client. But we also see I can do some other stuff around here as well. So when I go into my call forwarding on here, okay, if I forward my calls, I've got options to forward all my calls to voicemail, numbers. I can also now have delegate function natively from the communicator client. So when you look at things like, if I happen to be a boss and was lucky enough to have a PA that worked with me, then great, I can set up my delegate on there. Now, my calls, if I apply that, not only ring me, will also ring any delegates actually set in there as well. Okay? So my delegates can now make and receive calls on my behalf. So on their incoming call notifications as it pops through there, it sees called on behalf of actually comes through there. So they know who they're answering the call for. Perhaps if they're looking after several managers, so they can receive their calls for them as well. So that's a little bit about the back end. If I go back and just find Hillary again on here, I'm just going to show the contact card experience and how that changes and expands. exposes. So hover over the presence or hover over the photo. You know, I get this contact card. You know, I can email, I can IM straight from there. I can do that voice call, and I can choose which device I do that voice call on, or I can do something else. Start a video call, schedule a meeting formally as it goes through there, start to collaborate, start to share. I can pin this person to my frequent contacts as well, right? So I click on do that. Now with my frequent contacts, you'll see Hillary's popped in there. So that keeps your top 10 most often contacted people in there. So you don't have to search through all your user groups. So my list of contacts is getting longer and longer as I add people in there, okay? But now trying to find them can be actually harder if you just do a quick scroll down. So now for people, say you're working with on projects, you can pin them into your frequent contacts, and then they're there, and then when I say finish the project with Hillary, I can take her out and move forward. If I click, just hold that over there again, down on here, we then expose more information on the drop-down arrow. So we go through. So I can see, you know, what department Hillary works for, her work number, her mobile number, you know, her email, or SIP alias as it goes through there, and also getting calendar information, right? Currently busy, free at 12:30 as it goes through on there, and what time zone she works in. If Hillary wasn't available and I wanted to speak to somebody in our team, or you know, I just need to speak to somebody about her, about particular things she's working on, I can actually click on that organisational view, and there is that hierarchical view that's extended out now, straight from the contact card within here. Okay, and that's just pushed through. So that's other ways in which you find people, how you communicate with people. I'm just going to fire up my web browser as well for a second. Big ask was, with Release 2, when I go to a web page, it's got a phone number on there. I see that phone number, but then I need to either write it down or copy it out and paste it into Communicator Client. And you know, I'm stepping between applications. So I think was about how we simplify and take out those multiple steps and move it, you know, to single-click stuff. All right, so I've just got a page bookmarked up here, AA Location Finder for Auckland. Okay, I'll just bring this up. So it comes through, then I'll scroll down so you can see what I'm alluding to here. Watch this loads. All right, so that's brought me back 3 results for locations for the AA Auto Centres. What you will see next to the phone number is this little communicator icon, okay? Call. All right, I live up in Albany. One click from the web page, I can now initiate that phone call out to the AA. I probably want to put it down before they answer the thing. Okay. And now I can access phone numbers directly from the internet. This is an IE plugin, okay? There's development and work going on around Firefox and around Chrome and Safari as well in terms of taking that out and pushing it through there. All right, but by default, when you push this out to a PC, an IE user, they have this single click to call experience that's extended all the way out. Looking back through, so I've set Steve Letford up as my delegate. So when I was saying, when I set all my call forward rules up, okay, Steve's saying busy, inactive 1 hour on his mobile, but Steve is set up as my delegate, and I can just go in and add people if I've got rights to actually do that. So now they can go and take and receive calls on my behalf. Okay, so I can easily go in there and change that or initiate comms directly to him so we can exchange the information. So I suppose a lot of the stuff you see at the front end is around simplicity. All right, it's taking away steps. Obviously, I could be in Outlook, I could be in SharePoint, wherever I happen to be, and I have this same comms capability. All right, wherever I hover over somebody, say on an email, I expand and I can do that communications for Steve directly from there. All right. So whilst we say the communications client is this foundation that gives access to this wide array of users and searching for information and searching for people, you can not only take, using the APIs on the client side, on the server side, you can expose a lot of this information into your own apps. All right. So a couple of lines of code, you can start to expose presence, expose this contact card in there. So you have presence and you have this same ability, whenever you see somebody's name, whether it's a CRM record in your CRM system, okay, I would have that information and I can initiate a call out to a customer directly from there. Okay, so I don't think it's all about the client experience as it goes on here. This is really, as we say, just the foundation and how you can actually take and actually enable that and push it all the way through into your own apps. You know, right the way through the Office stack by default, we will actually see that there. Okay, so if I happen to think I'm on now, I'm try and get the SharePoint page. And we can just show how that looks in terms of, you know, in a SharePoint application, I can search for somebody in there, and now I can initiate that through. Okay, so people, I use Paul as he's in here right now. bang, Paul Quirk comes back in, okay, exposing his photo around there. You'll see I'm seeing his presence in real time. If I hover over his presence, it exposes that same contact card within there. I can do that communication session directly from there. So it's not about thinking, oh, I've just found Paul in the directory, I now need to step out to the communicator application because I need to call him or I need to IM him, all right? I can do it directly from there as well. You'll see that his phone numbers that are published in the directory, okay, so one in sort of standard telephony format, whether it's just his extension number, communication server will take care of that routing around there. You can see I have that same click-to-call capability that's exposed directly from there, okay? So it's really about simplifying that whole experience. So in summary, I suppose if we look back through, the client experience has changed, right? We put a huge, huge focus with Communication Server 14 around voice communications, okay? We've simplified a lot of the other stuff. You'll see this afternoon when we go into detail around voice and around conferencing and collaboration, how that experience extends out beyond just two people having a session with a voice call or a video call to several hundred or potentially a couple of hundred on there as well, as it moves out. But we've also made significant changes at the back end, making it simpler to deploy, and one of the sessions we actually have running, I think it's either tomorrow, is around deployment and setup. Screen. Okay. So setup and deployment with Andrew. So Andrew's going to run through in real time how you actually set up, how you actually configure and drive this through. Okay. We also have a voice integration and migration story. Because for most organizations, most customers, you already have some form of communications infrastructure in place, right? This could be a legacy, PBX, whatever it happens to be that's out there. So how do you migrate from this legacy environment of telephones and these silo types of communications with video platforms, and how do you migrate to Communication Server 14, all right? Because this is not something we would say, rip it out and start afresh, all right? It's about evolution. It's not about revolution as it steps through, okay? So we can and we will integrate with pretty much any PBX that happens to be out there on the market, so that you can actually phase this in over time, all right? It doesn't have to be a big bang on the weekend and we move our 500 users across for Monday morning, okay? We could move over groups or departments at a time. So leaving core users on the PBX infrastructure, migrating users, all sort of a single or a seamless dial plan as it pops through, so we can have users communicating between the two platforms. And we can either do that via direct SIT or through gateways, depending on that platform happens to be we're integrating with. And then the last session, we're going to be looking at availability and DR. Okay, so how we build this out for high availability, both in the data center, in the branch, as I touched on around the branch appliance as well. Now you can be sure that if you move all your communications infrastructure to Microsoft, that it is going to be scalable, it is going to be reliable, and you are going to have always uptime around the mission critical apps, such as voice as well. So with that, I'm going to end the presentation there. We've got about 10, 12 minutes or so in terms of questions. So always good thing about questions is to have prizes. I thought they were going to be Xboxes, but they're mice, so I apologise in advance. Around them. So what I'd like to do now, we can raise the lights up a bit and we'll take it up and take some questions around there. It's a good question, you get a prize, right? We've got some quality t-shirts and some quality mice to give away. Well, I mean, it's not with the communication server, right? So you're pulling that from another source, that's the be. So whether that's in SharePoint or whether it's in some sort of web service that you've added it in there, okay? But it's actually reaching out to retrieve that photo, okay? Yeah, so they'll pull that through from there. So I mean, if they're published in there, right, that's going to push it through, pull it through. Yeah, so if you didn't hear that, so the question was around, can you have somewhere where you singly import across the organisation and put in all of your photos around there, okay? So obviously Communication Server is actually pulling it from other sources, external sources, AD, SharePoint, web pages and the like, okay? So no, it was coming down here was, there is a bulk uploader tool to actually put all of that into AD and actually upload all of that information as well. I think it's worthy of a t-shirt. The thing about the t-shirts, they're coded on the front. You decipher the code, I haven't looked for it myself, be at the stand, the Microsoft stand at 1:30, don't quote me on the time, you might want to get there a little bit earlier, maybe 1:15, okay? Anybody wearing those t-shirts, there's a prize there, they're actually giving away Xboxes, anyone who's seen in those things, okay? So if you get there, you'll be able to get one of those. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So at a user level and across a network level. So at a user level, you can put via policy and you can say set max bandwidth for video equals 100K, 60K, whatever you have to be across them. Conversely, I mean, it's great managing it from the client, but say we got this WAN link between Auckland and Wellington, all right? And I've got all my users. We just enabled everyone, just give them all webcams, give them all phones. And now we've got this huge amount of traffic that increased that's suddenly happening across the WAN that we perhaps didn't have before, right, on the legacy system. So with methods called emission control, okay, we can actually limit and reroute traffic based on media type with voice and with video across alternate paths. Okay, so perhaps taking that voice call, we say maximum of 10 calls across that link. Call number 11 will reroute you on an alternate path across the PSTN and out that way. So we can actually manage and put set limits down to the users or based on location, but also based on those links and network topology as well. Come grab yourself on those. I'll waste not throw the things below. So there's one over there with his hand up. Yep. Sorry? Oh, in terms of how the policies have been expanded? Okay, so I think when we do the setup on one of those sessions this afternoon, we've actually got the whole list in terms of what they are, right? And don't think they've been published out as yet because we haven't gone to public preview around there. But once we get to that stage, you'll be able to see the full list of what you can now manage. Okay, so no. So the question was around backwards compatibility on devices. Okay, so these new phones are Communication Server 14 only, so they will only work with Communication Server 14. So how it works, say if you were upgrading Office Communication Server R2 to Communication Server 14, okay, the old client, the R2 client will work against the new back-end infrastructure, 14 infrastructure, but not the other way around, all right? So you can't take your R2 infrastructure and call that client, that's really cool, or those phones that really cool and go and drop it in there, right? So it's back-end first, then push the clients out. Yep, so geolocation is an interesting one. I didn't touch it on here, but I'll just bring my client up. The question was around about what about geolocation in terms of identifying location of devices and where they're connected to. All right. So what you'll see at the top of my client is just below my Do Not Disturb, it says Sky City, Auckland, NZ. All right. This is my geographic location. The primary purpose this was introduced is, I mentioned this LIS database or Location Information Service. Okay. This is effectively looks after and maps your data network infrastructure, so it'll have physical addresses of things like LAN switches, Wi-Fi access points. Okay, so it can actually map that if I'm connected to a particular Wi-Fi access point on net, it can pre-populate that information when I'm on the corporate network, and if that information has been published to the database, and it goes in there. The primary reason that's been pushed in there is, at the moment, it's for the US market and what we call E911. Right? If I'm in the US and I'm on the West Coast and I'm on a in the Microsoft campus at Redmond and I dial 911, okay, how does it know where I am, right? Because my account is back here in Auckland, right, New Zealand. So conversely, if I then went from Redmond and went to New York on the East Coast and dialed 911, the emergency service provider doesn't actually know where I'm calling from, right? I'd actually give that information. So the LIS database can actually take and map and send over SIP to the emergency service provider this geo information as well. But of course, it can also be used in things like reports in the back end, so we can actually start to do other stuff with this geo information and actually populate it through. Okay, so we're looking at things like how you suddenly do in search for users. You can only search for users, but you can search for users within a particular geography. Who's in my building right now? Who's on my floor right now, or in my town right now from my contacts list, and pull that through as well. So you see, that is really in its infancy in terms of what it is now today. And when I'm at home, when I put it in there once in terms of that public location, as soon as I connect back onto that network again, it'll pre-populate with that in there as well. Yep. So we'll start down the front and work our way up. It'll be easier. So I'm missing people out. I apologise if it's out of turn. Okay, so we do have a separate attendant client. Okay, so rather than running this communicator client, which you could do, the receptionist, there is a specific attendant type console client, soft client. Okay, and as long as the user's licensed, they can load that up instead of this one and put it onto the screen as well. Okay, so we can address the needs for receptionists and attendants. The great thing as well, it's not physically restricted to any location, right? So anybody could sign in with that account at any location and suddenly take over the incoming call routing for that particular site or whatever it happens to be. The second part of the question was, what about call centres? How do we address call centres? So we don't natively provide advanced call centre capability out of Communication Server 14. Okay. We have a thing we call response groups, which is, in telephony world, it's a bit like ACD or automatic call distribution, all right? So it can make some decisions based on inputs and route accordingly. But it doesn't make decisions like most contact centers now use skills-based routing and other types of decisions to actually route through. So we've worked with a number of partners. I think there's about 50 or 60 partners at launch who have been on what we call our developer tab for a considerable amount of time. Okay? And so they're bringing out, with, as they did with R2, but also for 14, advanced multimedia, skills-based routing engines that out of the box plug into this. Okay? So you can have the full agent desktop type experience and integration. Those type of things require your wrap-up times and all the other agent type functionality, as well as all the back-end reporting, real-time historical stuff. And they're available from a number of vendors. Okay? So if you go to the new Microsoft UC public site, Microsoft Communications Server, I think it is, .com, there are links there to those partners and give you all of their capabilities and the different applications that are there now ready to work. So we can address absolutely, if there's a contact center requirement, and a lot of customers there is, we can deliver on there as well. There's worth of a question actually around a prize for that one around there. The Kirby mouse. Lots more hands, I need 2 more prizes. We'll see if they stand up. In terms of the firewall ports, pretty much the same. Certificate services, they're sort of changing how things can actually acquire around there. So, like for this particular device, as an example, which came in last night out of the box, I mean, I can plug that in, VPN-less at home, okay, and that can connect, and that can be my comms device. So I just plug it into my Ethernet at home, and that'll connect up to the server. Before I actually provision that, though, I have to be on net to actually take that cert down and actually push it down there. But in terms of the provisioning process for certificates from where it was with R2, which was the number one issue that was always raising the Microsoft support was it's not working and it was certificate related, right? That was always probably how do we actually set that up, how we configure that. When we go through the setup and deployment, I think Andrew actually goes to touch through on certificates as well, so you'll see how that's actually done, and it's a lot easier, rest assured. Okay. This one. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yep. So, 2-part question was around mobility. Okay. The first one was around geolocation. Are we taking GPS coordinates from the mobile device? So, right now, no, today, but that could very, very easily be added into there. There are partners that have geolocations that already take care of that and have geo presence incorporated into the client. So, I click on somebody's presence on my desktop. It expands the client and it brings up Bing Maps, because obviously not Google Maps, it brings up Bing Maps there and actually exposes where they are in real time. I was joking about the map, you can use it on. The second part of the question was what about clients for mobiles? What are we doing around the client space? So we have a what we call COMO, or Communicator Mobile Client, with Windows Phone 6.5 today. As we go forward after launch, there will be a client for Windows Phone 7, as you would expect. You mentioned RIM and iPhone. RIM are developing their own client for BlackBerry devices for 14. They do have one now for the earlier version of OCS, and they're developing a new one for this. iPhone, there is already a third-party app out there called From the iDialog that addresses the iPhone market. And again, expect more developments in that space as we move forward as well. I'll give that one a prize. The mobile question is always a good one. You get another T-shirt, so make sure you're wearing it today. 1:15-ish at the Microsoft stand today. Okay. Yep. For external providers. So traditionally we do G711, right, from the mediation server to the outside world. One of the things we haven't really gone into detail here, and we'll do more around the voice thing, is something we've introduced called media bypass, and how we can actually now even negate the need to route voice traffic in and out of the mediation server to get to other places, such as a branch appliance or other gateways as well. But traditionally we'll just use G711 in terms of our SIP trunking capability to something else. Yep. So just where I had call forwarding down the bottom on here, you see I've got an option to SIM ring. I can SIM ring my mobile device. Bang, that's initiated. It says SIM ring is on. Anybody rings my DDI phone number, my mobile now rings. Done. Simple as that. So for pilot, you don't need to. The recommendation for introduction is you do. Okay, but it's really only now needed for HTTP traffic. Okay. So it means you don't have to have a real expensive high-end load balancer to actually do that. So yeah, a lot of change in that in terms of requirement on the back end as well. Yeah, I mean, realistically, small business with 10 users, a prerequisite of this, you've got to have AD, right? You've got to have AD deployed that's out there, and for your messaging, you'll be having Exchange server. There's not many 10-user organizations that would really have or deploy that type of infrastructure internally. Whilst we say you can virtualize all this onto a single box, there's other requirement there. So, if we look at what we're doing in the cloud and where we're moving to there, we offer, Office Communications Online, which right now doesn't offer all of this capability, all right? It's more around IAM, presence, peer-to-peer voice and video. But I'll say watch this space over the coming year or so, or just over, around how we extend and try and incorporate that full experience and take that into the cloud as well. So even a 10-user organization can subscribe and have the same capabilities. No, I mean, realistic in terms of scale, your prereq is not around numbers, it's around the infrastructure. You have AD deployed, we're talking about where this scales down to. I mean, realistically, I've seen customers with 70, 80 seats where this is practical. You get much lower than that, they don't necessarily have the AD infrastructure deployed and then want to go for this type of infrastructure. So there is a cut-off point. It's not necessarily around scale, it's around the prereqs around infrastructure that really dictates where this can drop in. It's not designed to be like a small phone system with 10 users replacement. Absolutely, it can be, but you obviously need to have the AD in there and deploy this first. Not native live at EDU. I mean, obviously with a live Hotmail type media federation, we see that being very, very big in the education vertical. So about sort of live at EDU and how that may play. So this is, now if you think in a campus type environment where you have your university lecturers and staff, the students can be sitting on MSN Live, okay, and they can have, because you can control by policy who has access to who, your tutors and students actually link back in through